Nigeria's Nnamdi Azikiwe was eliminated. And when you look at some of these removals and or elimination, they were carefully choreographed. When the leaders were careful to ensure that they were moving to liberate their people, it is now common knowledge that Western agencies orchestrated their removal from office. They invaded our barracks, and at one time it was being said of many African countries that coups were as frequent as breakfast. But the truth and the unfortunate thing that in many of those countries, even breakfast was not that frequent. So that we were never able to settle down. Then, of course, we had leaders who, upon ascending to power in Africa, became demigods. How many of you here will forget Mobutu Sese Seko? How many of you here will forget Jean Bedel Bokassa? How many of you here will forget Samuel Doe? And then we had the emergence of guerrilla movements where people rose against their very own who had used their positions of power to destroy what had been gained over the years. Uganda was not immune. You are victimized by coup d'etats. You are victimized by monster leaders. And then in 1986, you had the NRA, NRM storming into Uganda and acquiring power and subsequently converting itself into a political party, which has continued to reign supreme and to bestride the Ugandan political scene like the fabled Colossus. And Uganda was not the only one. In Ethiopia, it was the same thing. In Zimbabwe, it was the same thing. There is a sense in which there was the realization that in order to change your fortunes, you must do something about it in addition to praying about it. Because prayer without action is simply superstition. And then, in those early days, you will also remember that many African leaders, including the enlightened ones, took the view that because of ethnicity, it was necessary to unite the people. And whether you are speaking from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, or Lusaka in Zambia, or Kinshasa in what was then Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, or you are speaking from Nairobi in Kenya, and here in Uganda, the clarion call was that we must have one-party states. And the justification for one-party states was that we are so disunited, there are so many ethnicities, that if we allow multi-party politics, then what would happen to us is that we would be negatively ethnicized and that we would break our countries, and that therefore, to ensure that there was unity, we needed one umbrella under whose auspices and under whose guidance the people would be united. But no sooner had we sufficiently articulated the beauty of single-party states than Western Europe told us, no, that is not democracy. Democracy means that you must have many political parties. Democracy means that you must have regular elections. Democracy means that you must have the civil society, so that our brand of democracy as we embrace it today, I dare say without fear of contradiction, was not conceived in Africa. It was conceived for us in Paris. It was conceived for us in Madrid. It was conceived for us in London. It was conceived for us in Washington. And we have swallowed it line, hook, and sinker. Africa does not tell our own story. Africa does not design what is in our best interest. Africa still waits to be told what is good and right. And I dare say that that is why Africa does not realize our potential. But yet it is also important to point out that the African and African countries are more resilient than the European states. You know, if you allow me latitude as a guest must be allowed, permit me to say this. The ethnicity that we keep on talking about, African countries are just slightly over 60 years since they regained their independence. Take Nigeria, for example, with over 500 ethnic groups created within an artificial boundary. They have had their problems, they have had their hiccups, but the nation is still alive and well. The difficulties notwithstanding. Take Uganda, for example. You've had your difficulties, you've had your trials and tribulations, but the nation is still alive and well. Tanzania, with over 136 ethnic groups, the nation is still alive and well. There is a sense in which, in the face of our difficulties, we have succeeded in managing those difficulties, however painful it has been. But look at Europe, the pontificating Europe. They cannot handle diversity. They cannot. And it's important to remind ourselves this, if only to energize ourselves. The Europeans have had to fight two major tribal wars. They called them world wars. They were tribal wars. The European tribes were at war with each other in 1914. They may have recruited a few Africans and a few other people, and then they call it World War. Then they had another major tribal war in 1939 through to 1945. They didn't call them tribal wars, they called them world wars. And I want you to look at Europe and the purity of their nation. If you go to Sweden, the nation is almost 90% composed of the Swedes, with a small lapsed population, and for that small population, they even have a separate parliament for them. That is how they handle it. You go to Finland, 90% of Finland are the Finns, with small Swedish population. You go to the Netherlands, the same. You go to England, or the Great Britain, whether it's great or not, I do not know. But it's the Great Britain. Even there, if you talk to the Scots, they have something to say about the English. If you talk to the Irish, they have something to say. If you talk to the Welsh, they have something to say. Go to Spain, where there are a few more tribes, they had a civil war. Go to Italy, largely the Italians. And you walk across to Eastern Europe. Yugoslavia was united as one nation under Joseph Broz Tito. Did they not produce many countries during our lifetime? The Soviet Union has given birth to many countries. They have gone into ethnic purity. Africa remains the only continent on earth that somehow, having had artificial boundaries imposed on her, saying that we will retain those boundaries and make the best of it. And one need only go to the pronouncements in 1963, the pronouncements of Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Kambarage Nyerere on the inviolability of the boundaries, repeated again in 1964 in Cairo, in Egypt, that if we choose to redraw these boundaries, Africa will be perpetually at conflict, and therefore heavens have given us a lemon. Let us not ask for an orange. Let us make a lemonade unto ourselves. And we are making the lemonade. So today, to go back to our subject, in 1989, the Soviet Union collapses. So the world is no longer bipolar. The world is unipolar. The conceptual West has won the day. So Africa must now begin to identify how to behave. We are not ready. We are told that we must democratize. And democratization means that we must have new constitutions. So Uganda has a constitution in 1995. So Ethiopia has a constitution in 1984. So Malawi has a constitution. So Nigeria has a constitution in 1979. Ghana has a new constitution. Guinea-Bissau has a new constitution. The former Portuguese colonies have now regained their independence, whether it's Cape Verde or Angola or Mozambique, so that the former French colonies also have new constitution. But remember that the constitution that they are replacing, and Africa is the only continent where our constitutions prior to then were referred to, if you are colonized by the English, our constitutions were referred to as the Westminster model, not the Kampala model, Westminster model. The French constitutions were referred to as the Gaullist model after the 1958 pronouncement of Charles de Gaulle of France. That is where we find ourselves. In 1989, we are now told that we must have constitutions which are democratic. So we all have constitutions, and one of the pillars of democracy is that we must have multi-party politics. That is the touchstone. That is the litmus test of what a democracy is, as seen from the eyes of the conceptual West. Do we have a choice in the matter? No, we don't have a choice in the matter. We may pretend to have a choice, but we have no choice. Because Big Brother, World Bank, and IMF are breathing down us and telling us, you either do this or we do you.